Started. That is some great meditative music. So Russ, if you are the one running the call this morning, thank you so much. And couldn't do it without you. I appreciate it. It's always good. So gang, a fun message this morning. I want to chat with you this morning about connecting. You know, it took me several years being in the business of real estate to really get this, because when I first got into the business, I didn't realize that I was in the business ultimately of dealing with people, of connecting with people, building rapport. I thought I was in the business of real estate. You know, I was fascinated by homes. I grew up in trailers, most of you know, and so I was fascinated by homes, you know, brick and mortar. It seemed really cool to me that you could actually live in a home that had a foundation and then you know, build on that a subframe basically, and then put brick on that or stucco, you know, because I was used to living in homes that had axles and wheels. So, but it took me several years to figure this out, that real estate has nothing to do with brick and mortar. It really has nothing to do with the structure that we, you know, happen to be part of, whether we list it or sell it. Really, it has everything to do with the people who are interested in buying that structure and turning that structure into a home. And that's everything about connection. And the agents who recognize that and who become exceptional at connecting with other human beings are the agents who make the greatest deal of money. The agents who engage in activities every single day that allow them the opportunity to connect with people are the people who always have an abundance of business, regardless of what's going on in the marketplace. And that has always been true. It was true before I got into the business. It was true when I discovered that, you know, about 26 years ago. And it's true today. That will never change. And I find it fascinating that people in our business forget that. And they want to make it about so many other things than the fact that this is a people business. And the number one way to do more business with people is to communicate with them and to really genuinely connect to them. So I want to talk just about three basic rules of connecting with people. I think that, you know, as I share these things with you, there isn't anything here that I'm going to share with you that you don't already know. My goal is just to simply remind you of this and hopefully cause you to maybe refresh your perspective or change your perspective a bit and go out and actually talk to the people, whether the people are in your sphere of influence already or people you don't know. And keep in mind these important, what I call rules when it comes to relating with people. So the first thing that I want you to write down in terms of the rules of connecting with people is this: when in Rome, and somebody finish it for me because we all know the statement, right? When in Rome, what do? I know you're going to put it in the chat box, so I'm going to give you a second to do it. Brandon, Bernadette, Rosie, Miguel, Andy. What's the answer? When in Rome, what? Come on, gang, don't leave me hanging. Let me know you're there. Do as the Romans do. Yes, that is the answer. So when in do as the Romans do. And the answer to that statement, right, in terms of why do we do as the Romans do, I mean, where did that come from? Well, it came from the fact that when the Romans would come in and conquer a country or a city, that if you didn't behave the way the Romans behaved, what would they do? Well, they would imprison you, or they would assassinate you. They would kill you. And so people realized that if we're going to live, right, if we're not going to be in prison, if we're going to have, you know, relative freedom, we have to behave the way the people who are in control, right? So what does that really mean? Well, it means practically for us as agents, if we're going to spend time with people, you know, sellers and buyers, in other words, they're going to choose to work with us, we have to behave in ways that they find acceptable. In other words, we have to connect to them. So I want you to think about this. Alienation, being separated from people, is the opposite of connection. So if we fail to connect with somebody, right, if we don't feel connected to them or they don't feel connected to us, that's basically alienation in its truest form. See, for example, if somebody doesn't live by the rules of society, of modern day society, what do we do? If they violate the rules, or more specifically the laws, what do we do? Well, we first accuse them of violating the laws, and depending upon how severe the laws are, or rather how serious the laws are and how serious the infraction is, or the violation is, they could end up in prison. Well, prison is a way to separate people or to alienate people because they're not following the rules. In other words, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Well, if these are the rules and you don't follow the rules, you'll be alienated, you'll be put in prison. So that the rule still applies, very harshly speaking, in society when you don't follow the rules of society. Any of you who are part of a religion, you recognize that there are certain tenets, there are certain rules, there are certain rituals that you follow as part of your religion. And many of them are they're sacrosanct, they're not negotiable. And if you don't follow the rules, you can be excommunicated, or you can be basically kicked out of the church. And it's true whether you're Muslim or Mormon or Jewish. Now, I'm Catholic, so I can say this. You can violate most of the rules if you're Catholic. Just make sure you go to your priest and you confess. And I say that in tongue in cheek, but there's a little bit of truth to that. And if you're Catholic, you know what I'm talking about. But it's still true, right? When in Rome, do as the Romans do, that still is the case. And it leads to the second rule that I want you to write down. People like people who are like them. People like people who are like them. Or people like people who they want to be like. So we either like people who are just like us, or we like people who we aspire to be. Does that make sense? So if you think about that, for example, people join clubs. You join a club because you're going to join a club of people who are of like mind or have the same sort of passions or interests that you have. Does that make sense? So you join a club for the reason to relate to people. Or, for example, think about, elementary, junior high, or high school. The whole idea of peer pressure, right? Kids try to behave the way other kids do so that they fit in, so they're not alienated, so they're not separated. Now, I just pause here for a second. Rule number one, do as the Romans do. And then the second rule, people like people who are like them, or they like people they want to be like. See, those two basic rules have everything to do with our reptilian brain, our Cro-Magnon brain, our caveman and cavewoman brain, our Visigoth brain. Well, John, what do you mean? Well, what I mean by that is this, that our brain is wired to want to be accepted by people, all people. It's the very reason that when a stranger does something to anger you or to make you feel bad, whatever it is they do, they cut you off in traffic, or they make some sort of comment, right, that you felt was unfair or off color. The reason that ultimately you're angered by that is because you feel disrespected. When you feel disrespected, right, you are not relating to the individual, because people you relate to don't do those things. And we feel that anxiety, that anger, that frustration, whatever it is, because ultimately our brain is afraid of alienation. We don't want to be alienated, because alienation to our reptilian brain ultimately means what? If we were alienated during the times of the caveman and cavewoman, during the times of the Visigoth or the Cro-Magnon, right? What would happen? Well, we would be cast out and left to fend for ourselves. And as Brandon said, you don't survive, because you're going to be eaten by beasts, or you're going to be killed by the tribe. I mean, the whole idea there's strength in numbers comes from that whole idea, right? You had to have other people around you who were like you in order to survive. But when that group that you're quote unquote like expels you, you're not going to survive. And our reptilian brain still says that. So I want you to think about that. Your clients, your potential buyers and sellers, they are people, and their reptilian brains say that. And they don't like working with people, associated with people who aren't like them. It's as simple as that. So it leads to rule number 3, and I want you to write this down. Style is more important than substance. ... Style is more important than substance. ... And then write down the word initially. Because I've got to believe that you're imagining that, wait a minute, John, that's not true. Substance is much more important than style. Well, it is long term. But initially, style is much more important than substance. And the question is why? Why would I say that? Why would I say that at least initially, style is more important than substance? Somebody take your phone off of mute and give us an answer.
Because they want to be mirrored.
Okay, it's a great answer. Anybody else? And it's not the wrong answer, but I want to hear other people's perspective on it.
It's because people make up their mind pretty quickly on whether they trust you or like you or are pushed away by you. So it's within seconds, they're already making their mind up.
Yes, and both were correct answers, but that's the in-depth answer. That's it, Brandon, exactly. Because we instantly form opinions based upon style. It's the thing that's most readily obvious to us. See, we don't really get to know somebody in the first 30 to 60 seconds. You really don't. I mean, how many times have you made a false assumption or made a false impression of somebody in your mind based upon the way they behaved in the first 30 to 60 seconds? And then after a few minutes or after a few hours or maybe even after a few weeks or months or years, you realize that they're completely different than you expected them to be. I remember years ago in law school, a guy who became one of my best friends and still is to this day. I remember my first initial impression of him was that this guy was arrogant. He was macho. He was full of himself. And it made my skin crawl. I looked at him and thought, that is a guy I'm going to make absolutely certain that I don't spend any time with. Now, was I being highly judgmental? Yes, I was. Should I not do that? No, I shouldn't. But the fact is, we do as human beings. We are constantly judging people because it's our reptilian brain is trying to determine, are they like me? Are they friend or are they foe? And if they're friend, we try to become, closer to them, connect with them. If they're foe, then of course we try to alienate ourselves from them because it's danger. So what was interesting is that I was, at the time I thought, unfortunately paired with him on that first day of law school to try to, they took all of us and said, okay, we're going to assign numbers to you, even odd numbers. And I don't remember exactly the system, but basically, depending upon your number, then you had to be assigned to a particular group of people. Well, as luck would have it, I was assigned in his group, and it was a group of 4. So he and I and 2 other people were in the same group. And this was out of like 200 students. It blew my mind. It's like, that's the guy that they put me with. Well, what is so interesting is this, that over the next 30 days, I recognized that the guy was not anything even close, even remotely close to the person that I had seen initially. And he's an amazing person. He's not macho. He's not arrogant. He's very kind. He's very caring. He's very funny. He's very smart, right? I mean, all the things that I hope to be, aspire to be, or think that I am, right? Well, what's my point? Okay, my point is this, that if you're going to do more business in real estate, or if you're going to be more successful in life, generally speaking, because I don't care what it is that we're talking about, these rules apply. That to connect to people, at least initially, if we don't know them, right, and they don't know us, we need to behave the way they behave. Well, and you might ask, well, John, why is it that we have to change our behavior? Why can't they change their behavior? Because they're not asking you to follow them. You're the leader. And as the leader, it's your responsibility to take the lead on how to build a connection. And one of the first rules of building a connection with people is to behave the way that they behave. And if you'll do that, it allows their reptilian or their cave woman or caveman brain to feel safe. And when they feel safe, their defensive walls, like stay away, right? Those go away. They start to dissipate. And then you're able to actually connect with one another on a genuine level based upon substance and not based simply upon style. So if I begin to behave the way people are behaving with me, at least initially, I mirror and match their behavior. It allows them to feel safe. And it's not like I'm going to do it forever. It's not like I'm going to establish this relationship upon a false set of behaviors or patterns and be disingenuous. That's not what I'm saying at all. But for example, if you're prospecting, you're calling people, or you're knocking on doors, you want to pay attention to the words that they use, their body language, their cadence, right? This rate of speech that they use, their decibel levels, all of those things. I mean, those things may seem to be insignificant, but they're not. If somebody answers the phone by saying good morning and I say what's up, that's probably not going to go over well. An elderly lady, 75 years old, says good morning and I say what's up. She's not going to relate to that, right? But if I call a 30-year-old techie, somebody who works in social media or in the tech industry, and they pick up the phone and say what's up, and I say good morning to you, again, there's going to be a disconnect. So if he says what's up, I'm going to say what's up, this is John Ciet with Century 21 Everest. It's a very simple example, but it's a very important one, gang. We need to modify our behaviors, specifically our body language and our speech, in the initial parts of our conversations as we're working to connect with people, to share a message, to allow them to feel safe and comfortable so that they will follow our lead, so that we can help them ultimately get what it is that they want, which is to either buy or sell a home. So what I want you to do, if you haven't done this, is to learn more about personality styles, because the more you learn about personality styles, the more you realize the ways in which you have to behave in order to connect with a particular type of personality style. And we don't have time this morning to get into the various personality styles and their characteristics, but I will just very quickly just say this. There are four, generally speaking: the driver, the analytical, the expressive, and the amiable. Those are the four general categories of personalities. A great book to read on these, to understand more about them, is Versatile Selling by the Wilson Learning Group, Larry Wilson. Versatile Selling. Okay. But I just want you to think about this. I'll just finish on this thought. Most people would say, well, I'm not willing to change my behavior, or it's uncomfortable, or it's very disingenuous. I just want to be me. I do me best, and people will just have to accept me for who I am, or everybody accepts me for who I am. Well, none of that is true. None of that is ultimately true. In some cases it is. What I would say is, in 1 out of 4 cases it's true, because you have your dominant personality style. And unless you're willing to modify your personality style from, say, a driver to an amiable, you'll have a very difficult time relating to amiables, because amiables relate best with what? With amiables. And expressives relate best with expressives, and drivers with drivers, and analyticals with analyticals. So I've had people over the years say to me, well, John, it's very disingenuous. I don't want to be a chameleon. Listen, what I'm asking you to do is stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about the person across the phone, or across the table, or who's at their doorstep, right? The person who's at the threshold of that door. I want you to think about them. Your job as a leader is to help them feel safe and secure. And if you have to behave in ways that are similar to them for some time so that they can feel secure, so then you can begin to behave the way you normally do and be that great leader, then so be it. That's what great leaders do. And if you can figure out how to master that, to recognize someone's personality style, to pay attention to the behaviors and mimic those behaviors, I promise you, you will develop much deeper relationships much quicker with people when you engage in your prospecting, when you go out there to try to find business. And it will revolutionize your ability to find business in any market, because that's what top producers do. They're great at relating with people, at helping people feel safe and secure, and as a result, regardless of the type of market that they are in, there's always an abundance of business for them. So gang, I hope this makes sense. They're very simple rules, but they're very powerful. Get the book, Versatile Selling, read it. Now's a great time to read it. We've got the Christmas holiday coming up. You're going to have some extra time, I'm assuming. And it would be a great time to brush up on all of that and put all of that into action, especially in the beginning of the year, so that you have a strong first quarter, so it sets you up for your best year ever in real estate in 2022. All right, so let's close this up with some affirmations.